Hello, sweet friends, and welcome. This is Gina, and this is the Rebookery channel. So this is part 2 of my anatomy of a journal page. And in part 1, which I'll link below, I pretty much just set up like the whole background and just kind of did a lot of play with paint. So now what I'm going to do, and I used, the main thing I used in part 1 was a paintbrush. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go find something to make marks with. And so I just have this bowl of just random weird things that I get. I find around the house. A lot of it is packaging. Anything that I think will make an interesting mark, I try to keep. Because you never know. You might find, the end of a pencil and it might make the best mark. So I'm going to use a couple little pieces of plastic. I think one of them is from an outlet, like an electrical outlet. Actually, I think it's from the plug-in that goes into the electrical outlet. And then the other one is going to be an empty pen container. And so I'm just going to dip it in paint and I'm just going to make some marks on my page. And so when I start off with this one, I'm using a really vibrant pink, and I'm going to try to create almost like a road map with this paint, with these marks. Kind of a place where I want your eye to wander. And so I make sure that I go, in one direction, and then I have another set of marks that are kind of going into another direction, and then picking up with a third set of marks that are going back in a different direction, just so that it creates a little bit of a flow. Then I am going to take and I'm going to mix up this paint just a little bit because I want not the same pink. I want it to be a little more vibrant, but a little less pink, if that makes any sense, a little less dark. So now I'm going to take this pen and I'm just going to make these marks using the pen, and I'm going to follow that same premise. I'm going to put the marks in a couple of different groups, and I'm just going to kind of have the directions going so that they flow into one another, or that your eye will go from one set to the next. And this pen made some really interesting marks because it wasn't a full circle. It was more like parentheses. So it was kind of cool because I thought it was going to be a full circle, but there was these little cutouts in the pen. So I'm just putting these marks over top of my the dry page that I had done in part 1. Now, I know I had originally said that this was all done in one setting, and it was, but I just didn't want the video to be so long that people would lose interest. So that's why I broke it up into, I'm going to actually break it up into 3 parts. So this part right now that I'm doing is I'm just taking, I want to lighten this up a little bit. And so I am taking some white spray ink and taking some big drippy drops and just kind of plopping them down on the page. And then I'm going to take the cap to, it's a cap to a bottle or something that I had, and I just kind of twirl it around in the paint so that it makes circles. And then this is a really fun product. I found this, oh my gosh, over a year ago at an art store. It was on clearance. They're called liquid metallics, and you like bought a set of them, and it's just like this really, really shimmery colored ink, almost like an ink or a paint. And so it's just nice to add as a little accent. And so this is just a blue color or a turquoise color. And so I'm just going to dab it on with my paintbrush and just kind of make some marks. And you don't really see it. It's very subtle, but I don't know. I just kind of like using them. I think I actually end up and cover these marks up, but that's the whole fun of this, of art journaling, is that it's about the process more than, or at least for me, it's about the process more than it's about the finished product. So I have fun using it. Even if I'm going to cover stuff up, I still have fun using it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean off my little palette here, which was also a lid from a jar or something. And so I'm just going to take, I have a whole bunch of paper next to me that I like to use when I make journals. And I'm just going to add paint, the leftover paint, to these papers because I think we've talked about this before, but I like my pages to already have something on them. It just kind of makes it less stressful when I go to create because I'm not worried about messing anything up. And so I'm going to just dab all of that excess paint onto that. I think that was actually like a paper bag. So I use my dryer and I'm going to get it good and dry. And now what I'm going to do is I'm done with all the background. So I want to turn this into an actual finished piece, a piece that is going to tell a story. And so I like to finish telling the story by using some ephemera. And so I'm going to go through, I have this little box and it's just got some stamps and some small little bits of paper that I'm going to pull and I'm going to see about using in some sort of a collage. Now, as I pull the things out, I don't really know what my story is going to be. In fact, I have no idea what the story is going to be. I have a lot of bird stamps because these are stamps from my grandma. And so I'm looking out my window and I see that there are a lot of birds outside. So I'm thinking birds, but I'm not for sure. Mainly I'm pulling things based on the color. I'm also pulling things based on their size and their shape. So I just quickly grab what I think I want to use. I'm not going to use all of it. But this is a good starting place. And because I narrowed down my search to these items right here, I don't get overwhelmed by having too much. So now I'm just going to play around with these things and see if I can figure out what's the best composition, what's the best way to lay them out. Again, I don't really know what story I want to tell. And at this point, I'm kind of thinking of my grandma because, again, like I said, the birds and using her bird stamps. There's some old food stamps that I placed, and I absolutely love that. That's the yellow-orange in the upper right-hand corner. I love that. Once I pull that out and I put it on that page, I'm like, okay, I don't care what I do with anything else. I have to use those stamps because something about the color and where I placed it is just magic. On the left-hand side, that was an old cover from a tally book, like Bridge, a tally card. And it's falling apart. And so I think this might be the back cover and it's already torn. So I thought I would go ahead and use it. But it is really falling apart because you'll see here in a minute. I'm going to glue it down and I'm going to use some matte medium. I started off using bottled glue and I was like, okay, I just do not have the patience to mess with my bottle of glue. You can see I'm spreading it on here. And I'm like, all right, this isn't going to work. So I ended up and I went to the matte medium. That way I can brush it on with a paintbrush. And that little piece broke off. So I'm going to stick it in there. But then my hands get really sticky. And so then it sticks to my hands. And you know how that goes when you guys are playing with glue and paper. Everything sticks to everything. And I always make a huge mess. So I end up and use some tape, and it's I've used it before. It's a strand tape, like there's fibers in the tape, so I'm pulling it off here, and you can't tear it, you have to cut it, but I just love the way it looks. And so I'm going to use tape to actually use as an accent visually, but I'm also putting it there because I want it to hold that little piece together that came off. So now I'm switching over to this matte medium, you'll see, and it's much easier to do than to just use a bottle of glue because now I can, be more mindful about where I put my glue and I can use my paintbrush. And when I'm doing collage and stuff like this, I always like to not only put the adhesive underneath the items, but I also like to go over the top, especially with really fragile things like that tally card over on the left-hand side. So again, I'm trying to piece together this story. And so I've kind of gone away from the bird thing because now I'm leaning more towards flowers. And those flowers that are on that tally card are violet, and they remind me of violets. And my grandma, the same one I got those stamps from, she grew African violets all the time, and I just cannot get my grandma out of my head. And so I'm really thinking this story is going to have something to do with my grandma. Now, the piece that I'm working on over here, this is an interesting piece. This is a piece of chipboard from a scrapbooking kit that I got, oh my gosh, probably, I don't know, 10 years ago. The store Archivers used to sell scrapbooking supplies, and I'm sure I got this with some scrapbooking company, maybe Basic Gray or something, but it's like a little Polaroid, and I've just always held on to it because I thought it was super cute. So it had an adhesive back, so I took the adhesive back off and I stuck it down to some handmade paper because I loved that green and that gold. And then I took this stamp that was in my little box, and another thing that I am totally in love with is this stamp. It's a 5-cent postage stamp, and it's the right colors. It's purple, it's green, and it's so cool because it says homemakers. And I've been holding on for it for a while too because I don't know, I just love it. Okay, so I'm totally thinking flowers, birds, homemaker, grandma's stuff. I'm totally trying to put this whole story together, but again, I'm not for sure how it's going to work. And so I play around with this little bird stamp here, and I can't really figure out where I want it to go. And so I sit for a while and I'm like, all right, I need to go and find me a focal point. I've got a great background, a great base. I've got a good start on my collage, but what's my focal point? What's going to tell the story? What is basically, if I was writing, what's my main idea? And so that, my friends, is where I'm going to leave you, because I will show you my main idea, and I'm giggling right now because, oh my gosh, I love what I ended up and came up with, and it was totally unexpected, and it was not anything that I had thought out previous to doing this, but it turned out to be pretty awesome, and I can't wait to share it with you in part 3. All right, my friends, I hope you're healthy. I hope you're happy. I hope you do something creative today, and I will see you again in part 3. Thanks for hanging out with me.